we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not. Hi there, and welcome to Better Than Not, the podcast that aims to capture shifting perspectives and thought-provoking ideas in conversation, which is based loosely on my series, A Changing Frame of Reference, which you can find in the Substack app, and I hope you will, as it might give you some insight into what this podcast is all about. I'm your host, Doug Gardam, and today I'm excited to welcome guest Dan Martins. Dan, how are you?
Fine, Doug. Good to see you.
I used to kind of believe in accidents and coincidence. I met Dan last weekend, and I don't believe in that anymore. I think most stuff kind of happens for a reason. And I met Dan, and we started talking. Dan is an adventurer who had a calling for God very early on, and it took him away, so to speak. And his story is so fascinating to me that I thought, why not have a chat with them on Better Than Not? So here's Dan. Dan, what got you started on this? I can't say it any differently than life adventure, like motorcycles, diving. Like it's just, how did you hear this call at a relatively young age?
Yeah, I remember in high school, I had heard about two guys that I knew, and they were a couple of years ahead of me, and they went around North America in a VW van.
Like a Westphalia?
Pardon?
Like a Westphalia van?
Oh, no, just a VW van, an old one, no Westphalia. It wasn't a camper. It was
really?
a van that they threw a mattress in the back. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I thought, I'm a motorcycle guy since I was 12 years old. And so I thought if they can do it in a van, I can do it on a motorcycle. So I was just graduated, just turned 18 years old. And I thought I had a 750 Honda. I'm out of here. I'm going. So I took off, not really knowing what was coming. I actually left with two other guys, and they dropped out along the way. I was on my own. I went across Canada, and all my stuff got stolen after a month. And the whole trip was 3 months, 15,000 miles, and never slept in a bed, and had no change of clothes, and didn't care what I looked like, and so yeah, it was an adventure, and being alone. Now this is before smartphones, before Wi-Fi.
Oh yeah. No,
phone calls were expensive, and so I didn't talk to anybody I didn't know for probably a month, and so I got really lonely, and I was starving for conversation, and so I invented ways how to start conversation, and that just enriched the trip. I found out I can meet anybody anytime, and and so that just made it a lot more fun traveling. And I just came to really like traveling alone too, because you meet more people. If you're traveling with somebody, you're always talking to that person about what you're seeing. If you're alone, you're just in the moment. Who's this guy? Hey, can you tell me about this? Or, and so that just made it really enjoyable, and it opened up. So from there, North America, then I just,
so Dan, so you're like in like your late teens, early 20s when you did this, right?
I had just turned 18 years old. Yeah.
So did you go like to summer camp and camp out? Like, did you camp as like a kid with your family, like an overnight, like tenting? Like what? Like, this sounds just like I finished school, jumped on my motorcycle, and I was off. Is that like how it happened?
Yeah. I had no tent. I had a foam mattress and a sleeping bag. That's all. and then I had a backpack that I, with hose clamps, put on the back of my bike. Like there was no touring motorcycles. There was no Gold Wings or anything like that. And then my backpack got stolen. So I just had what I was wearing. Yeah. My jeans. And I had a navy blue T-shirt and wore that every day. It turned purple in the sun. I mean, when I got home, my clothes were so dirty and oily and greasy. My mom burnt them. She wouldn't let me in the house. I had to get undressed at the back of the house. She burnt the clothes. I went into the shower.
So
Yeah.
wasn't like your friends and family like Dan, like what are you doing? Or did you not give them any forewarning? You just got up one day and left.
Yeah, they didn't have much warning, I think. I just told my buddies, hey, I think this is doable. I'm going to do this. And two of them came with me.
Yeah.
One guy made it to the prairies, and the other guy into Ontario somewhere. And after that, they'd had enough of biking. They went home, and I
Oh
thought, no,
wow.
not done yet. So I went like over to Halifax, and then just down the east coast, the seaboard, right to uh, Key West, and then
No
up and
way.
over the Gulf of what is it, Gulf
Mexico?
of Mexico, and then into Mexico a bit. But and then from there I turned around and then I went up the west coast. Yeah, and the bike just ran, you know,
Wow.
oiled my chain every day and just changed the oil. And I had a credit card for gas, and at the end I was living on about $1 a day. I had almost no money.
Oh
Just
wow.
a gas credit card, no Visa or anything. Yeah, the world was much simpler in those days.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say that would so this is gonna I'm gonna say, would you say this is like 35 or more years ago?
that was in
Right?
1973.
Okay, so
1973.
right
Yeah, I
after the
graduated from high school in 73, and then 2 weeks later I set out. Yeah.
well, 1972 seems to be a milestone for me because that was the Canada Russia series of hockey in
Oh, I see. Oh,
1972.
yes. Right.
So I was like 10 years old and I was a big hockey fan. So that kind of turned like the hockey world upside down. And over the years, it has been kind of a time marker for me to get a sense of where things were. This was pre Team Canada. This was after Team Canada. So that's when you kind of did that. The other thing, and I mentioned this at the beginning, is years ago, I read this book called Ghost Rider by a gentleman named Neil Peart. Now, I don't think you're familiar with that, but he was the drummer. He's passed away. He was the late drummer, but he wrote all their lyrics, and he
Okay.
was their drummer. He's well known around the world as a drummer. But when his wife and his daughter was tragically killed, and then his wife, he said, died of a broken heart a year or
Wow.
so later. And to get over this, not that he knew he was doing this, he jumped on he was a BMW he had, and literally drove like up north, across through like the northern provinces, then down the west coast because he's from like the east side of Canada, to your point, kind of the opposite of what you did, but drove through Mexico. And many people read that book today
Hmm.
as a way of getting over their grief. And I thought, well,
Interesting.
I'll mention it to you whether you know it, because you did kind of, well, not for grief reasons, but you did a similar, just, I'm gone.
Yeah. And that developed kind of a wanderlust that I just thought, okay, where to next?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So you figure, how far did you go? About, do you say 15,000
It was in
miles?
miles in those days, 15,000 miles. That would be like 24,000 kilometers. And then I enjoyed it so much, very little rain, that I got two of my buddies the next summer and said, hey, you guys, you got to do this thing. So we went together. So then there was three of us. We did the thing in reverse. We
Oh,
went down the West Coast.
no way.
And yeah, and it was a little more civilized then. I had
Yes.
two guys. I had a change of clothes. I wasn't wearing the same underwear for 2 months. Yeah,
Oh,
I
wow.
was I was really filthy the first time, so it was more civil. Yeah.
So in all of this, like you said, you started to practice ways to talk or introduce yourself to people, right? Like,
Hmm.
did that just come about from like like going to like different places and finding you're meeting people and having like a challenge of trying to figure out how to talk to them, or how did that develop with you?
I remember the first time I did it. I
Oh,
said, I gotta talk to somebody because I'm riding motorcycle. So it was summer, and there was a young guy, pumping gas, and I needed gas. So, and I asked him, so how long you been working here? And I chatted, and he was not that busy. So I pulled the bike over after he filled it out, and I went inside and started chatting with him a bit. And I think, for 10 minutes, I thought, wow, that felt good. It was so nice. But
amazing.
I'm still a social guy. We have social needs.
Yep.
And it filled that need. I thought, wow, that was so cool. And I didn't have much money. So, to killing two birds with one stone kind of thing. And then I learned, okay, around lunchtime, I would buy a can of Coke or a bottle of Coke. There wasn't the lift
Yep.
top or the twist tops.
Yes.
So I would go to a rest area where people were having a picnic lunch. And then I would go up to him and say, oh, do you have a bottle opener or something? And I could open it. Oh, sure. And it went into a conversation. So, oh,
Yep.
where are you from? I said, oh, I'm from a lot of people in those days didn't know where British Columbia was. I said,
Yes.
I'm from West Coast of Canada. What? You drove all the way on that motorcycle? I said, sure. He said, oh, come on. Oh, and so they would start asking questions. And then they'd ask, are you hungry? Do you want a sandwich? I said, oh, no, I'm fine. I ate yesterday, And, oh, come on. So an hour later, after having my lunch and talking, and that just, and crazy ways. Like I would, at times, I remember running out of gas on purpose. Again, just for the adventure. Now what? Okay, now I need gas. I would hitchhike. Somebody would stop. Oh,
Yep.
and then they would drive to the gas station. Sometimes they would drive you back, or I'd hitchhike back. And it led to a conversation,
Yes.
and just for something different than riding. I'm meeting people. It's a bit fun. I remember being down south, and I would just for a while. I wouldn't wear a helmet, and the police would pull me over. Hey, where are you from? I said, West Coast of Canada. What? Hey, son, you got to wear a helmet. And I said, like, oh, you mean even if you don't want to, you have to wear a helmet, even if it's hot? So of course, that's the law. And I said, oh, okay. So I would put my helmet on, and I wouldn't get a ticket because those crazy Canucks, those crazy.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Yes.
I'm 18 years old, and so it just led to all kinds of interesting situations and lots of good conversations, and yeah, it was fun.
And you really like you didn't know what you were kind of doing, right? Like it was just happening in a way.
No, I was really making it up as I was going, So
It's to me, it's an amazing thing because, I mean, one of the things we've just gone through this crazy pandemic. I mean, a couple of years ago, and I become very aware because now we're really. I mean, in '73, we didn't even know what mental health was about, right? Like that wasn't even a
right,
comment that people were
right,
dealing with. We didn't really know about this kind of epidemic of loneliness. And I think we just had like friends, but we didn't realize the necessity of communicating with people. And
hmm
like it's when you say what you say, like it's like in today's world, that would almost be groundbreaking. Like it's kind of funny when you think about how we've come over this period of time and
yeah,
how important it is to communicate with people. Like it's
right,
just like you're not healthy if you're not with like a community, right? In a way.
yeah, yeah.
And you
And now
kind
there's,
of
I think, unhealthy elements. But now it's all social media. Everyone's got a
yes.
phone, and
Yep.
you're communicating all the time. But maybe it's not face to face. Whereas in the old
Yes.
days, everything was face to face.
There's something that comes about and that translates not through the electronics, but when you're in the full reality of the situation, when you're with a person, you notice, like in the three dimensions of our reality, you notice things that your brain notices and your eyes that you don't even know you notice in that communication. Like I think of when you're
Yeah,
filling up with gas and you're saying hi to the guy who's filling it up, right? Like you don't even it becomes something that, well, they're just like me, right? Like in many ways.
sure.
And you you kind of discovered this on your own, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It just, I needed to talk to somebody. And then after those trips, then I went kind of international, went cross cultural, which added a whole nother level of communication, more
Oh
difficult.
man.
Pre-internet, people, especially in the Middle East, I bought a little motorcycle, a little 250 rode all through Europe, and then it was a used little Honda 250 XL with 30,000 miles on it, a little one cylinder, and it was still running. And I thought, well, what's next? I was so naive, and you didn't have Google Maps, you
No,
didn't have
no.
Google to check any information. Oh, Turkey. Okay, so I went into Turkey, and
So,
and
so
everything
Dan,
changed there.
I'm interrupting you because I want to come to you, but what? So you've gone down the East Coast from basically Abbotsford. You've gone across Canada, gone down the East Coast, most of it by yourself into Mexico. Then the next year you gone again, probably most of it by yourself down to the where did like the idea that I can do this here, I could do this anywhere else in the world. Like when did that like how did that occur to you while you were writing, or like how did that like what made you go, let's take this to another level?
Yeah, um, that's okay. Where did that come about? I mean, I went with a friend to Sweden. He was already going, and I thought, and actually, this is part of my faith journey too.
Okay.
Um, is I was quite a risk taker, and after these trips and all, I went on. It got really crazy on a motorcycle. I lived on these things, and I had accidents, and I had three actually quite serious high speed accidents. Anyone should have killed me,
In
and that
in at home?
on that
Or
second trip, the second
no
one we went
way.
along, yeah, on that trip, I'd never had an accident before,
Oh
and
wow.
that's when life really got serious. Until that time, it was just, you know, living for myself, basically.
Right.
Whatever I have to, I'm just living to have fun and like that.
Yep.
And that's the first time where I don't know if the first time, but three accidents in a row all should have killed me. Where I thought, like, okay, God's doing something here. God's
Ah,
doing something. And
okay.
so then I thought, okay, I better straighten out my life. So I moved to Calgary with one guy to get away from my group of guys and stuff. And I thought, well, I better get religious.
Oh.
So yeah, so I
So
went.
prior to this you hadn't been particularly.
I grew up in church, but I thought,
Yes.
okay, just traditional, and um, I knew the gospel, and
Right.
I grew up in a Christian family, and that. But I thought, oh, okay, I gotta live. I gotta live life bigger than this. Was my thinking, and
Okay. Okay. Okay.
you know, and so I didn't really get it at a heart level. Perhaps maybe I didn't. It was a long time ago,
Right. Right.
but
Yep.
I wasn't living. I wasn't living it for sure. And
Okay.
so I thought, okay, I got to break away from the crowd I'm running with, and get away from any partying or the lifestyle. And
Yep.
so I moved to Calgary with a friend. We went to church, thinking, okay, this will get God off my back. Now I'm getting religious, and that lasted about 3 weeks. I said,
Oh,
oh
really?
yeah, I can't do this. So then I thought,
Oh,
yeah, I just thought, I was uh, living the rules kind of thing. And to be a Christian, you got to go to church
yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. And so, but I thought it seemed quite boring to me, actually, And
The
so,
church.
yeah, just the church. We just went to church. That's all. We
Right.
didn't get to know
Right.
any people. My friend, I just went to church. Okay, now the obligation is finished for a week.
I
Just
love
go
that
to
thing.
religion. So now I can live for myself, and
Yes.
then oh no, it's Sunday. I got to go to church again. To keep God off my back, kind of thing.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
And
I get it.
it was failure. And so then I thought, okay, motorcycles are too dangerous for me. God gave me a good warning there. I got to go. I got to go with. I'm going to try hand gliding. So my friend and I, we were. You can't believe how stupid we were and how much grace God has given me. You know,
Oh my goodness, man.
and so we bought a used hang glider. Hang gliding, that was in 1974, the fall of 74. It was
Okay.
just a newly invented sport, basically. They were in their initial stages, you know. I mean, the glide ratio was 4-1. You know, it
Oh,
would glide
wow.
out 4 foot for every foot it went down. Now, with the technology, they're like 16-1. So these things
Oh,
fly.
wow. They're a lot
And
different.
so
Okay.
we thought, oh, who needs lessons? Lessons are lessons are for amateurs who don't know what they're doing. You know, talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
insane. So we were an accident waiting to happen, and sure enough, it happened. You know, when you jump off of cliffs and you don't know what you're doing,
Yes.
it's embarrassing to even talk about this. But yeah, one day I had an accident, and because of my ignorance, and again, when I saw the ground coming, I thought I'm dead or both my legs are broken. And then I hit the ground and out of breath. But so I broke my right. The point of the story is I broke my right foot really bad,
Oh,
and
okay.
it needed surgery. Had to have pins put in and stuff. So I'm on it. I've got a cast on my leg, and I grew up in snow skiing, so my ski season is shot. And so what am I going to do now?
Oh my goodness, man.
So I was out for coffee with some friends, and they were talking about these two guys who they went to this little Bible school in Capenray, in
Oh,
Sweden
okay.
called Capenray. And
Ah, okay. Yeah, I'm
wow,
familiar with that.
yeah, these guys came back different. Wow. And so and then I knew a guy who had applied to go to Capenray, or one of the guys at coffee saying, "Hey, this guy's applied to go there," and but he decided not to go. And I said, "Really?" And he didn't tell them they're not coming. They're expecting him there. And they said, "Yeah, they're expecting him." And he didn't tell them he's not coming. And I guess he put a deposit down or something. So one of the friends says, "Hey, Dan, why don't
No
you go
way.
instead of him? Why don't you go
No
instead?"
way.
And and I heard that this school is kind of at a devotional level, no, very little homework and stuff. And so I thought, yeah, actually, I'll go over there, go to this Bible school, and then my foot will heal, and then I'll travel Europe. Sounded like a good plan.
Oh
So
man. Okay. Yeah.
I literally showed up at this Bible school. There was another guy that was going that I went, and
As this
he,
other person.
as this other person, but he says, "Oh, you must be." I won't use the guy's name. You must be so and so. And I said, "Yeah, no, he couldn't make it. Actually, I'm Dan Martins. I came instead of him." What? No, we don't have a Dan Martins coming. But I kind of, I'm on crutches. I got my suitcase. I
Yes.
was I was kind of thinking he's not going to send me home, right? They
Right.
do have a
Right.
place for me.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, I stayed. I filled out an application while I was at school, and but 3 weeks into the school, my heart was open, and I just
Oh
heard it.
wow.
I
Okay.
heard it again, the truth of the gospel and what life, life in Christ was. And I was open after 3 weeks, just hardly sleeping. Just, is this real? It was cold. I was out at night walking through a forest. Like Sweden, there's snow. It's
Yes.
cold. We're in northern
Oh
Sweden.
yeah. Yeah.
And I'm walking and I'm just talking out loud to God. Okay, God, I get it. Jesus, I give you my heart. Uh,
You were there.
I'm living for you. Yeah, this is the only way for me. And I just laid down my life, and I was talking to God out loud, and
Okay.
something happened. Something happened I can't describe. It's like that instant I knew it was true, and I remember calling out, "What? It's true! I can't believe it! It's true!"
Oh wow.
And at that point, I knew I was a new creation. Old things have gone, new things have come.
Amazing.
And I knew I was going to heaven. when I died, which I had a fear of death, almost dying. I knew I was going to heaven, not because I'm a good guy. I'm not.
Right,
Not
right.
because I deserve it. I don't. But because God is that good, and Jesus
Wow.
Christ came for my salvation, and all of that came
Wow.
together, and that was life changing. And
So how old were you then, Dan? Like, how old are you at this point?
I was that was in I was, I think, 20 or 21 years old. I think 21 years
Okay.
old at that point. Yeah.
Okay. And this is like the beginning at Cape and Ray. Like you're a month or two in.
Yeah. I think 3 weeks in. And then I was just
Wow.
eating it all up. Everything was going in, into my head,
Couldn't get
right down to
enough.
my heart. And yeah. So when that was done, of course, yeah, it ended up me buying a motorbike and traveling Europe and into the Middle East. But now the difference was I was journaling it and I was walking with God. It was like a newborn baby in this new relationship with God. It was an incredible adventure with God.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a
So
little.
what?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. You had
I'm
little.
saying, especially in the Middle East, I had a little FM radio, AM FM radio, so I could listen to
Yes.
BBC News. So once a day, 'cause it was battery powered, once a day, I would listen to the news and get updates and stuff, what was going on in the world, and that, yeah.
Wow. Because I mean, when you say that, that brings me back to like the transistor radio. That was a pretty big deal. The little portable with the 9-inch 9-volt battery,
Yes,
and
yeah,
it's like that stuff is just all gone now, right? Like
yeah.
it's not.
It's a different world. It's a different
It's
world.
so different.
Yeah.
So you're in Sweden at Cape and Ray. You've got this new world with God, with Jesus. Where are you going? Like, you're not thinking of coming back to BC, or are you?
Well, actually, actually, from there, I went to England for spring school. There's a Cape and Ray in England, in
Yes, yes,
Carnforth. So I went
yeah.
went to spring school in England, just kind of shortening it a bit, and then from there, I went to England, and then I bought a motorcycle. By this time, my foot was healed and that, and I bought this little used motorbike, and I went to school, and so the afternoons were off. We had classes in the morning and the evening, and I was just exploring on my motorbike through the Lake District and that.
Oh man.
I thought, man, this is so good. When school's over, I'm heading out. There's a lot of world to see on
Oh
this,
yeah.
on the motorbike. And the more time I spent it, then I was talking to God or I was talking to my motorcycle. And so your choice. So I'm talking to
Wow.
God as I'm going, and then meeting people. And English was somewhat spoken in Europe in those days.
Yes.
And but once I got into the Middle East, almost no English. This is pre-internet, so there was no YouTube, there was no English. Now a lot of people speak English worldwide. It is really an international language.
Yes.
But in those days, you would get into areas where almost no English at all. I mean, years later, I was in China when China first opened.
Yes. Yes.
Um, really, yeah, I was in that's another story, but almost zero English. That was by far the most difficult country I had ever traveled in. When
When I
China
was
had
in
just
China,
opened up a bit. Mm.
I would agree with you. For me, the struggle with China was not only hearing it, but like when you're in Germany or you're in Italy, you have like an alphabet that you understand, so you
Right.
can kind of fake it a bit.
Hmm.
You can't do that. Like when I was in Shanghai, like it's like I don't have any idea what those pictures on that sign look like or even mean. So I
Yeah.
completely get what you mean. But coming back
Zero.
to England, how do you get from England to the Middle East? Like,
Yeah. Well, I did the Europe thing, all the countries
yeah,
in Europe, just going, and I was looking for the mountainous, windy little roads, not the major cities, just all the countryside,
right.
because it was only a 250. My speed was limited, fortunately. Um, And then I got down to southern Spain. I was going to go down into Morocco and across North Africa, and then up into the Middle East. But they were fighting. That was in '76. They were fighting a war between Tunisia and Morocco, or one of those countries you couldn't get through. So I went
Okay.
back up through Europe, and I spent some weeks in Greece. It was beautiful,
Okay.
and it was so
Yep.
cheap. I was sleeping out, and it was hot and that. And I thought, the bike's still running. I'm not ready to go home. And then, like I said, I went into Turkey, and it was a different world. Everything changed. And when I hit Turkey,
Okay.
it wasn't European. They're kind of European. They're the link between Europe and the East, kind of. But in those days, it wasn't. They weren't trying to get into the European community in those days. And yeah, it became much more difficult, much less English, and and in one sense, much more exciting because of that. Yeah.
Really? So I got so many good things bubbling in my head here. So at this point, you've kind of toured North America. You've toured like a big part now of Europe on your motorcycle. You've kind of found almost like a purpose in the sense of the calling that like God and Jesus have actually come to you in
Hmm.
the real. You never had this thing of like I've got to go home and get a house, or I have to come, like I'm sure a lot of the guys that you went to high school with, I mean, they're working and they're going to get a house, they're getting married, all those kind of things are starting to bubble. This is not something that's even in your plan at all at this point.
No, no, I'm just thick-skulled or a slow learner, whatever you might call it. I mean, yeah, my friends, or in recent years after that, they were all getting married. It seemed like every second wedding when I was
Yeah.
home, I was going to a wedding. And yeah, it just, that hadn't sunk in yet. I had no desire for a house or really to get married at that time yet. That came much
Interesting.
later.
Interesting.
And I just wanted to be out there exploring somehow. And, a long term relationship with a woman, that was just going to hold me back kind of
Really?
at that point. So, yeah.
Interesting. So was the part of the drive to the Middle East in that area, like now you're saying even up in Turkey, was this part to kind of understand the early like parts of the Old Testament and where things happened as well, or was that not part of this picture to you?
No, I was, no, I hadn't thought it through that long.
Okay,
That
okay.
long. I was just, I was loving the countryside. The weather was good. I followed in Turkey all the way down the coast. It was beautiful. It's full of five-star hotels now. There was
Amazing.
nothing there. Incredible beaches, little towns, and traveling. I needed two things. I needed gas for my motorcycle and I needed food. That's all. When I needed gas, it was mostly I would point to my gas, pull up to a guy, point to my gas, or take my gas off. Benzene, benzene. Where?
Yep.
Benzene. So, go this way or whatever. Or if I was hungry, I would just stop. Somebody say food and rub my stomach. Food. Where? Where? And, go this
Amazing.
way or something. And I could survive. And
Oh
night,
yeah.
at night, I would get something to eat in the evening or so in a little town somewhere. And then I would drive out of town. It would be just dark, these country roads, just dark, and make sure there was no lights, no headlights, no tail lights, no one around. And then I would drive off the road into the bush.
Oh
And
wow.
and it was territorial, like a wolf or something. I would stop, turn off my bike, and I would get used to the quiet. And okay, this is my space now. These 3 meters around me, I own this place. And then I would hear maybe a truck or a car go by. Okay, they don't know I'm here. Nobody knows I'm here. And then I would sleep there. And then I didn't even have a flashlight. And so in the morning I would wake up and realize, oh, this is where I slept. Okay.
And be
Get on my
amazed.
bike and head out. Yeah.
So like, damn, part of like what I'm finding, like this is like, so it's is thrilling and exciting, but is there no fear here? Like,
Um,
or has this just become something that becomes not part of the picture at all? Like you're living so much in the world, not the, how do I say, you're living in the world versus how most of us learn to live in our homes and our familiar environments, right? Like
mhm,
your that for you was the world.
mhm. Yeah,
Amazing.
I would say at the beginning in Europe, not much fear. You know, it was Western. I kind of understood the worldview and that. But in Turkey, it was pretty clear. The core values and beliefs here are quite different, and I didn't understand it. So
Oh
at first,
yeah.
I remember the first nights, I would actually, when I would get my space in the dark, I would kind of try to camouflage myself, like maybe break up some sticks, and I would, the bike is leaning on its center set. I would sleep under it and a little bit. But after a while, I realized actually there's nothing to be afraid of here. I didn't have any bad experiences. I remember one day waking up in my sleeping bag, waking up, and here's this little shepherd boy crouching over me with his hands in just looking at me. And he had his father's. He had a few goats. That was his job, looking after his father goats. And I woke up, and this face is staring down at me, And so, oh, okay, hello. We couldn't speak to each other, but he just watched me. So I got out. I had my little New Testament, and I got out. I would be reading and writing my journal. He would just, his face right there, watching me write in my journal. We're just smiling at each other. He had nothing to do. This was the most
Wow.
interesting thing he had seen that day.
Yep, for
So
sure.
his goats were grazing there. He's okay, and so then I said goodbye, and so a lot of fun stuff. Not much was fearful. I did get afraid later because
Oh,
this was in 1976, and
okay.
so I just kept going. I was going to go through Iran and Iraq, but I heard on BBC cholera had broken out in those countries, in Iraq or Iran. And I thought, oh, I better not go there. I had the sense
Okay.
that
Yep.
I had no
Yep.
vaccines or anything. And so I thought, okay, well, now where do I go? I better go south. So I went like into Syria and then Lebanon, Jordan, and the border crossings were insane, because had a Canadian passport. I have a British motorbike, and I have no insurance. And so try to get through the border crossings, and they didn't know English, and they want bakshish,
Yes.
bribes,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
sometimes would take a whole day. It would take a whole day, and so. But once I got into southern Lebanon, they were fighting a major war between South Lebanon and Israel, like today. I mean,
Oh,
they
really?
didn't have the sophisticated weapons that they do today. But when I
Right.
got through, like Beirut was blasted out. Remember, hotels, whole floors were blown out of the hotel, laying in rubble on the ground and stuff. I had no idea what was going on, Doug. I was
And you and
completely
you're
naive.
driving your motorcycle through these areas.
Yeah. And I was getting through the checks, the military checks. I realized that everyone had guns, so I realized, okay, this is getting pretty dangerous. I realized, like, there was tanks beside the guys with machine guns and stuff, and I thought I was just so naive, Doug. In Canada, I'm 21 years old and so naive. You know, Canadians don't have guns. My dad had a gun for hunting, but it was locked
Yes.
away. And here
Right.
there's, I mean, I remember guys even asking me if I had a gun. One guy wanted to trade. He liked my watch. He wanted to trade my watch for a pistol because he realized I didn't have a pistol. And so I soon learned, oh no, better I play the naive thing and
Right.
just like I'm lost. I'm just
Yes.
wandering.
Yes.
I'm a Canadian, kind of a tourist. I don't know what's going on. Play the naive card or the stupid
Yes.
card,
Yes.
and that's pretty easy for me to play. I was, you know, and that got me really so far down in until one military check. They turned me back, and I was thinking, because this is kind of an off-road bike with high fenders. It's a kind of a
Yep.
dirt bike, street legal.
Right. Right.
I was
Right.
thinking, I know they're fighting war, but I'll be able to get through somehow, drive through some field somehow, because I wanted to. go to Israel. And
Right. You
I just
couldn't.
can't get over myself. I haven't talked about this for a long time, so more stuff's coming in. So one of the commanders turned me back, so I had to go follow. I was going along the ocean. I had to go up north a bit, and then I just turned east again, going through villages, and I stopped because I was going to need gas soon. Stopped in this village. It's a ghost town. There's nobody there. And
Oh,
so I
wow.
stopped wondering where everybody is. And then these guys came out of the woodwork. They just came out. And one of the guys had been to university. He spoke English, and he says, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm just traveling." And he said, "Oh no, this is dangerous. See those hills right there? That's Israel, and we're getting shelled every day, and we're shelling back. And these towns have been evacuated, no women and children." And that's when I really
And you
started
haven't
going,
you haven't seen any of this armed fighting that he's describing to you.
no, I'm not seeing any active fire or anything. But I mean, there's a lot of military equipment around and stuff.
Yes.
But this is the first time I got kind of scared. And so I'm
Oh,
talking to
okay.
that guy, talking with him, and realize, okay, yeah, okay, this is really over my head. I'm a risk taker. I like risk, and that
Yes.
now I think I'm a bit over my head here now. And so as I'm talking to this guy, this uh, it's like that. It reminds me of the show Rat Patrol. The guys with the jeeps with the machine guns on the back
Yes.
come through,
Okay.
and they stop. And the commander comes. He sees me talking to this guy. Says, "Hey, um, uh, camera, you have pictures." He wanted to. I didn't know what was going on. See,
He thought you were a
later I figured
journalist.
out what was going on, and I thought, oh, because there was no digital cameras. I have
Yes.
slides of this. I've got slides of this, and so I thought, I don't want all my slides from Europe and Turkey. I don't want to give those away. And so I gave him 2 rolls, 36 rolls of slide. And he says, not these, not these. And he thought, this guy is stupider than I thought. And he just thought, oh. And then they just drove on.
Oh,
So
way. Oh, wow.
only later I realized there was 4 militia groups all fighting it, 4 Arab militias all fighting Israel. I don't know how coordinated they were. And so when
Right.
this guy saw me talking to the other militia group, he was wondering, who is this guy? So then I realized, okay, said goodbye to these guys. I'm out of here. So I'm driving away. And then another group, they come up passing me and with signs, pull over, pull over. So they pulled over and they made it clear, you follow us. So I had to follow them to a military base. And the commander at the
Oh,
base,
man.
he spoke English very well. It was like a Quonset hut. He was wearing shorts, air conditioned inside.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think he had probably been educated in the US or something. And he was very nice. He said, "Are you hungry?" Oh yeah, I'm hungry. So he had rice brought out and I'm eating
Oh, wow.
and he's questioning me. And only later I'm realizing, Doug, I hadn't put this together. I could have been an Israeli spy going
Yes. Yeah.
behind the lines and then later going, and I've got a camera showing them. What, that's how naive I was. I mean, I was a naive kid from Canada, right? And so
But that didn't occur to you until that point.
I think it was occurring when I was playing the knife. It was becoming more and more clear, and the fear was
Okay.
building. So I'm in here talking with this guy, and then he was listening, asking me questions. So I'm just playing. I'm this lost Canadian kid, naive, and then he says, I had eaten it, and he says, "Listen, son, I'm going to give you some advice. You get on that
Okay.
motorbike and you go back to where you came from." And I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm going back now." I got on there and I'm riding away and just like, "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you,
Oh,
Jesus.
man.
Thank you, Jesus." I mean,
Unbelievable.
I could have been shot, buried. My parents would have never knew what ever happened to
Absolutely.
me. So
Absolutely.
yeah. And
Well, I mean,
that
that's
was one of my relationships, deepening relationships with God is going through this and experiencing God's grace, even to a naive idiot guy, you know. And
Well,
so,
do you think they were at all like surprised that here's this young kid that's got apparently no fear? He seems to be capable of what he's doing. Like, it's just, to me, it's like, it must have
yeah,
been such an odd, but I mean, also, Dan, when you say that, this is like pre even 1980, right?
yeah, that was in 1976. Yeah. And I wouldn't
So
say I
no.
didn't have fear. I just was able to cover it maybe.
Ah,
Um,
okay,
at
okay,
that point,
okay.
I had considerable fear. Yeah, at that point,
You were
I
just able
realized
to kind of.
I was way into the danger zone here, and I'm hoping to get out of here. Yeah.
Well, the interesting part to me is you described like your North American learning how to say hello to people and getting to actually talk with strangers that you've never met before. All of this seems to be preparing you for to do this because it's
Mhm.
not a strange thing for you to do. It's a natural thing for you to do, right?
Yeah, yeah. Meeting people and asking good questions gets you a lot of information, and just
Yes.
you know, when you're asking questions, you know, it sends a sign that, oh, this person's interested in me. It gives you a lot of information and to diagnose what's going on, and that, and it endears you to people when you're getting into their lives and stuff. And I mean, when you read the Gospels, Jesus just asked a lot of questions,
Oh
you
yeah.
know.
Oh yeah.
So
Like it's the
asking questions first before talking too much. Yeah.
well, it's also interesting to me. I have this expression, and a lot of people that have been on the podcast are what I call boots on the ground. So I've had a previous guest on the program that actually, after his whole life of corporate world and stuff, did what you did. He sold everything, his house and
Mm.
everything, and has gone on a world motorcycle tour.
Wow.
And he's in like, I think he's in Vietnam right now, to be honest with you.
Okay.
He's from like literally not far from Seattle is where he was living, um, but in that sense, you like, this is not something you read about. This is not something that you listened to a podcast about and heard a story like kind of most of us do. Whether you were like completely understanding what you were doing, you were doing it. Like, to
Yeah,
me, that's the remarkable part.
in those days there was no blogs, and I had never heard of anybody doing this before.
Oh
But
yeah.
I just knew, why not? I can do that, you know. And I mean, the North American experience prepared me for that, and then doing the
Yes.
cross cultural thing that just took it to another level. And you know, and even then, you know, motorcycles weren't as trouble free, so I had to keep this little 250 running. I was in an area, there was none of the, if I ever broke down, there was no parts. If the motorcycle would break down, I'm done. Like, I never saw another one of these Honda 250s in the whole area. So it's not like you could just go to
Unbelievable.
the motorcycle shop and get parts. I had to baby that motor.
I,
It was, it had a lot of miles on it when I bought it. So just nursing it along, that was another part of the adventure, right?
and you probably knew how to jury rig so many things to make them work even when you didn't have the right part, right? You just learned, like, method breeds invention, so to speak, right?
Sure. And it was a
As you
simple
could.
bike. I mean, I was in at one point, I was at a point where I had no brakes. I had zero brakes. My front brake, I had fallen, it had broken off, and so I couldn't use the lever there. And the back brake was so worn because I couldn't get a new brake shoes. And then
Right.
I only used it for emergencies. But you know, it was a drum, it wasn't a disc brake. The drum was stretched so far because the lining was so thin that the spring in there broke, and it got in between the drum and the brake shoe, and it honed it out. So I had to open it up. I had to take the brake lining out and throw it away. So there was no back brake, and the front brake was broken off. So I had zero brakes. Just
That's crazy.
another sign of stupidity, right? But I didn't stop. I got to keep going, got to keep moving, right?
So now this commander, who's, like you said, educated, he knew what was going on, and he probably realized that he was talking to someone that wasn't aware of it, but he probably respected you because of what you
Mhm.
were doing.
Yeah.
And he said, you need to go home.
Yeah.
Where did you go from there?
Yeah. I think he thought this guy is so beyond stupid. He's no danger to him. And he had fed me. And in the Middle East, if someone feeds you, that's something,
That's friendship,
that
right?
hospitality and that. And he wanted my best to get out of this area because the next person might not be as good to me. And he was very
Dude,
gracious to me in that way. And I think he had learned that I now got it,
so
get out of get out of
don't you
town.
think that it's interesting because you're in like life moments here that you're experiencing that we no matter what side we're on, there's a humanity part of us. And as you described this commander, um, he seemed to care for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know him at all. And
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't really know what you're about, but
Mm-hmm.
he's like seems to be have a something in his heart that's caring that you
Mm-hmm.
only to me you get to when you're in circumstances like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you learn, like, again, one of the things that the gentleman that was on the podcast previously, Guido is his name, right? He was actually from Germany but raised in the US. And
Okay.
he was saying, he says, despite all that you hear in the social media about how awful we are, he said, I'd be willing to say that 24 of the 25 people I see every day, because he's similar to you, just says hi to everybody. He says, are remarkably friendly and
Mm-hmm.
people will do anything for you.
Mm-hmm.
That strangers like just don't know. And your story, despite happening in 76 and pre that, you're experiencing the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I've got so many stories. Arab hospitality. I mean, walk into a place looking for food. There's a group of Arab truck drivers. They invite me over. They've got
No,
the bread and
no
a
way.
stew in the middle and that. Oh, join us. And just they don't know me. I just walk in and they're feeding me. And just
Unbelievable.
countless stories like that, because I mean, it was unusual, I guess, in those days being a white guy. What are you
I'll,
doing here? People didn't travel as much. And just
I'll bet.
so, what's this guy doing here? And they were curious. And that curiosity that
Oh
opened
yeah.
up so many good stories and very few bad ones, very few.
Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing. So the commanders now said, you need to go back to where you came from. What happened?
Yeah. So from there, I headed up north. I got to back up, I think, to Beirut, and then I went east into Damascus, into Jordan.
Oh,
But then I'm
oh,
going. I don't want to go back, but I can't go into
right.
Israel maybe. But I'll just keep going. So I got to Damascus, and then I went down south and into Jordan, and then I was
So
going
are
to go.
So aren't you kind of feeling like scriptures and history and like the Jesus or even Paul's, say Apostle Paul's journey? Are you not feeling some of this as you're going on these areas now?
I got that more when I was in Israel later,
Oh,
um,
okay, okay,
but I'm
okay.
not there yet.
Yeah, yeah.
I hadn't really connected those dots. Like,
Okay.
so much of, biblical culture in that is present day Turkey and that.
Yes.
I wasn't that interested or hadn't really connected those dots yet.
Okay. So
So
I interrupted you
at
there.
that point, I was missing all of that, really. Yeah.
So now you're heading south. You said you're now into down in Jordan. I interrupted there, but I'm just trying to get an idea of how this whole thing's coming. So now you've said Damascus, Jordan.
Yeah. And what I should say is, I realize now I was deeply into culture shock. I had never heard of the term culture shock before, where
Yes.
nothing
Yeah.
is familiar with you. And my whole system is shocked, kind of like what's going on. I don't understand much of anything. It's
Yes.
exciting, but I don't really understand. And I haven't had a conversation with anybody who understands me for months and
Right.
months. I never met anybody
Yes.
I knew. Nobody understands me. And so
Unbelievable.
everything I'm doing, I'm processing with God. I'm journaling. I'm literally almost talking out loud to God. And I'm seeing incredible miracles.
Oh yeah.
Miracles that almost only a new believer would see.
Okay.
I mean, no, I wouldn't say daily, but again and again. It's like a newborn baby. I've got no fellowship. A newborn baby needs their mother. A newborn
Right.
baby is just served. Just keep it. It was almost like that with God. I was just
Okay.
I couldn't talk to anybody. I was just examining my faith, growing my faith, talking to God, um, all of this stuff, and asking God for this. Oh no, I'm in trouble. Like, you know, this bike had a very small gas tank because it's kind of off road. I can't tell you how many times I almost ran out of gas or ran out of gas, and just one a miracle after another.
Oh man.
And just I was just talking all of this through with God, and in that, my relationship with God, I just saw God come through again and again, and
Wow.
that stayed with. It was so foundational to my new faith, kind of that. To this
Wow.
day, that's never kind of left me. Not that I go
Yeah.
back and think of all of it, but I've been just building on that through my life. Yeah, just
It's
seeing God,
very real.
His provision and His faithfulness, and it becomes unquestionable. Not unquestionable, but when you have a track record, oh no, what am I going to do now? I'm going to pray. God has come through so often, and
Unbelievable.
that's the story of my life. Kind of starting there, uh, like that.
So,
Yeah.
so like you described, now you're down into the Jordan area. This is kind of interesting to me right now, Dan, because we're doing a Bible study on Joshua.
Mm,
And so as you're describing this, when Joshua's taking the Israelites across, and God opens the Jordan River up so they can cross it, and I'm picturing you now on your motorcycle going down this same area. That's why I'm saying I'm interested. Like, but you're living there, right? This isn't like something that you're kind of trying to
yeah.
match up. You're just living like
Right. Yeah. I
where
wasn't on
you
any
are.
tour, and I had no background information. Even a map. You can't. There was no Google Maps.
No.
And I didn't even have a map of the area. I'd have to, try to look for a bookstore or something to go in to look at a map, and just finding my way. Nothing made a lot of sense. But getting back to, I was leaving Jordan, and so the next place I'm going, I realized I couldn't get into Israel. The PLO was very active
Oh
in those
yes.
days on
Yep.
the West Bank between Jordan and Israel, and it was all military there. So I realized, okay, couldn't get there. And so I thought, okay, where's the next? If I keep going, where to? Oh, Saudi Arabia. So I thought, okay, that's next. So I had to leave Jordan. I had to go through immigration customs to leave Jordan. Then there was a few miles of no man land. It was just desert, no man's land. I was sleeping out in the desert and stuff. And so I'm going through there. I got to the Saudi border. I'm looking at the Saudi border and the chaos, and I just said, God, I'm done. Doug, I literally thought I was losing it. I thought I was going insane because it
Really?
was culture shock.
Oh.
Uh, and this has been going on for months and building and building. I just didn't know. I thought maybe I was losing my mind or something. Just everything that was going on in me and all of that. And I saw that and I said, God, I'm done. I just can't go on any farther. But I also can't go back. How do I go
Right.
back through all the border crossings? Because it would be up to a day just arguing with these guys and they all want money and stuff. And then so I turned back. Later, I found out I couldn't have got into Saudi anyways, because in those days there's no tourists allowed into Saudi, only expats.
Okay.
You need a visa for there. I couldn't have got in anyways, so I went back,
You
and
know
I
what's
thought,
really interesting about this, Dan, is if you come back to North America, at that point in time, when you talk about Saudi Arabia, there was the whole OPEC thing, and fuel prices were going through the roof, right?
oh yeah,
Like, like we thought the end of fuel was about. Like, I can remember the lineups
right,
at the gas station, and what
yes,
again the agenda the media was telling us is the world is running out of fuel, and
okay,
you're right there.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
my goodness.
yeah. Right.
Cool.
I'm
So,
in a producing area, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yes. Wow. So
yeah.
you couldn't have
Always
got into
thought what I
Saudi
needed.
Arabia anyway.
Yeah. So then I came back and I realized, okay, how do I get out here? Then I went to back in Jordan. I went to what's the name of the town? It's a Aqaba. It's a port city, and I thought, okay, the only way out without getting out and to keep my bike is getting on a merchant ship. So I spent about a week there at the port. You know, in those days, this is pre 9/11. There was no security. You could just drive up. I would
I'm sure.
walk up the gangplanks onto the ships. And usually someone on the ships, you know, they're traveling internationally, spoke English. So I would just ask, I want to speak to the captain. I want to speak to the captain. So I'd
Oh
get on these
man.
ships, freight ships. Most of them were, I think they were loading bulk fertilizer. Get on these ships and just say, can I come on your ship? I'll work whatever you want. Can you take me and your motor? I'll go anywhere in the world, but I have to leave this place. And it was kind of always the same story. No, we can't. We're going through the Suez Canal. There's a manifest, how many crew on, and you know these
Oh
ships
right.
are chartered. If they get held up for any reason, it's thousands of dollars a day. So no
Oh,
captain was, and so was willing to take me on. So I realized, that's kind of dead in the water. But I had an interesting incident there. So I got to know Aqaba a little bit, the town, and so one night here, um, this guy's flagging me down. These two guys flagging me down. So I'm stopping. And he says, and they were Asian,
oh,
like
okay.
Chinese or something. Oh, what
Yeah.
are these guys? He said, oh, my friend hurt, hospital. And his friend had a big gash and he was bleeding. So I knew where
Oh,
the hospital was. So he put him on this little 250. I had my sleeping bag in the back and my little backpack. He put him on behind. So I'm going to drive away. No, no, no. He got on too. So I got two.
oh,
I'm sitting on the gas tank. I got these two guys on me. I drive to the hospital, and so we go in there, and I was just going to drop these guys off, and they said, "No, no, 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 wait, wait." And so what happened is these guys were in a bar, and they got into a fight. Somebody smashed them over the back of the head with a whiskey
oh,
bottle or
with
something, and
oh,
so they had to keep him for the night. But his mate says, "Oh, come to my ship, meet my captain." Because you're such a good guy, you held it. So he brought
no
me to the ship,
way.
introduced me to the captain, and it was an Everlast ship from Taiwan, and they were being loaded there. And I asked the captain, can I come with you? I don't care where you're going. I need to leave. And he, same story. Sorry, I can't bring you on. But while we're on port, you can live on the ship. So
Oh,
here I was. He was just so thankful. He says, "Thank you for looking after my crew, taking me off. Thank you so much." So I had my
oh,
own room, my own shower. I could eat in the officers' mess or in the crew's mess. Chinese food, man. I was in heaven. I could shower every day, go swimming,
oh, wow.
so I that was really an enjoyable time. But it was
How
short
long
lived.
was that for?
Oh, I don't know. That was maybe 4 or 5 days, and
Oh
I
my
would
goodness.
I
Yeah.
would jump off the hull of the ship. You know, it was pretty high, and the guys were watching me. They thought, "What's this crazy Canadian doing?" Nobody's swimming in the port, right?
No.
And that was just a lot of fun. A lot of fun, good food, and I had a shower. I was living the good life for a while, and
Oh wow.
it was a reprieve in a way. That
So
was fun.
did you eventually get out? You must have done
Yes.
something different.
Yeah. So what I did, then I realized. So I went to Amman, Jordan. I heard you foot passengers or walk. You can walk across. There was only one crossing from Jordan into Israel. It was over what they call the Allenby Bridge, and you can walk across, but you have to get permission, and it takes 3 days to
Oh,
get permission. So I went to Amman, Jordan. I applied for that 3 day permission, but I couldn't take my motorcycle. So I had to sell my
oh,
motorbike. So it took me 3 days of incredible headaches. You know, I'm Canadian. This British motorbike and to sell it. Oh, it was 3 days. I was so done, Doug. I was so done. If I would have known how difficult that was, I would have stopped on the street and given my motorbike to a kid. Here, do you want a
oh,
250
really?
Honda? It's a gift. You take it. Yeah, it wasn't worth. That's a whole nother story. What happened there? But I ended up getting something for it, and then I walked through. I had to go with my permission. I got to the crossing, and that's a whole story. I won't take the time to describe that.
Crazy
But
man.
it was crazy. Then I got into Israel. And so I got on this bus. We went over the
You
Allenby
got
Bridge.
into Israel.
Yeah. Yeah. I had the permission, and it was over the Jordan River, this little bridge going over. And then we were in Israel territory, and everything changed. The culture had changed. They were kind of Western background, and I remember I was absolutely overwhelmed. And I mean, the guards or the immigration guys, the security guys, is these Israeli soldiers. They were apologizing to me, and they took me separate. They went through all my stuff, and they were always saying, sorry, the times are, we have to, it's a bad situation. We've got activity going on here and that. And they were apologizing to me, but they took everything apart. These old translucent Bic pens, these clear Bic pens?
Yes, that are still around.
They're still around. They took that apart. They took the refill out and to check it. I mean, the security was so intense. It was at a whole nother level, right, of anything I'd experienced before. But then they gave me the go-ahead. So I walked out of there, and I'm in Israel. So I got to Jericho. I shared a taxi with some others, and I got into Jericho, and I remember getting out of the taxi. Look at this place. The buildings are there. You could just see it. You could sense it. And I saw these two Israeli girls, or two girls in jeans and T-shirts across the street. And so I didn't even think. I just darted across the street, looked at you. Hi, how are you doing? So where are you girls from? And they're looking at me like, kind of like, whoa. I'm in their face. Whoa. And then they're looking at each other. And then I realized I'm a babbling fool. What am I doing? I just didn't even think about it. And they're thinking, who is this guy? And I just said, oh, okay, sorry, I got to go now. And so I walked away. And then I said, what just happened? And then I realized, I haven't seen women in the last month.
Oh, wow.
In the Arab world, I just had met guys. The women are covered. Yes. I'm not in the social setting where you would meet women. I'm traveling, getting gas, getting food, driving here and that. And so any women, I never had a conversation with women. And suddenly here were girls that I recognized in jeans and T-shirts, like the girls from Canada. And I was so starved for that. I mean, I like the Middle East, but I was so starved for that. I threw myself in that situation. I thought, okay, settle down. And so,
how many people, Dan, though, have even had an experience to be able even to relate to what you're describing here? Like, it's just like, how you describe that, like when you haven't, it's almost like you haven't seen, like having not seen anyone for like a month, what it would be like seeing another human being. And now you're kind of like, and that's like how would that even feel? Like, it's just crazy to me.
Doug, what makes it so different now is the internet. You have access to all of the information in the whole world at your fingertips.
Yeah.
Then there was none. You'd have to go to libraries or whatever. There was no info. You couldn't plan most people do plan their trips and would. I didn't plan it, and I was making it up as I went. Even now, if you make it up as you go, you grab your phone and you get the information you need, and you translate it to English or whatever. It's all there. It's easy. It's so easy now. It's so easy to travel. But there's something missing too. It's so easy you don't need people, kind of thing. So maybe there's less interaction. Any information I got, I needed, I had to get from somebody face to face. You couldn't go to a gadget or anything. So I think it's just different. Traveling is for me personally, it's so easy now. My wife and I, we travel a lot, and it's just so easy. You can book your ticket online. You get your flight. We used to have to go to bucket shops and buy, tickets that people had bought, cheap tickets. There was the system international. There was these, what they call bucket shops kind of thing. They were kind of tickets that were in other people's names that they had bought, and then they sold them to these places and stuff. So you could use these, you could resell these tickets, kind of thing. But there was none of that online. You had to go, you had to find these places.
Yes.
You had to
Yes.
find people who knew where these places were. And then you would have to physically go there, talk to these people, and they would look at the tickets they've got. Oh, we got a ticket to there. You want to go there? I was okay. I'll go there. Okay. So you'd go there, and then at that place, you would find one of these wholesalers, guys that were selling these kind of tickets. You'd have to find them, go to that shop, and get your ongoing flight, kind of thing. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy like
No.
today. It's everything online. Book your ticket from your phone. Yeah,
It will. I mean, that's to like you carry your phone all the time, so you can actually get a flight anytime you want to, right? As you're describing. So it's like
yeah.
it's in many ways it's kind of hard to actually even imagine. I often compare this to like music. Like, I mean, back so if we went to the late 70s for music, you bought really LPs then, right? Like vinyl records. And at that time, to imagine you would eventually have on your phone everything that's ever been recorded that you can get in an instant, and it literally
Unimaginable.
costs you nothing.
Yeah.
That was unimaginable. Like it's unimaginable to go. You bought a piece of plastic, only one of them, and it costs you more than what we pay for all the music we listen to on our phone. Like it's just, and it's like how technology's kind of crossed all these boundaries. Like it's just swept right across them.
And it's
So,
not stopping. It's not stopping with AI.
oh no,
Wow.
oh no, no. It's going to become more and more.
Yeah,
In many ways, Dan, I'm excited by what's going on,
sure.
but there's a part that like this is why I like these conversations is because that's kind of missing to me. It's like even a face to face in a coffee shop. It's like it's something like when you're meeting these people, like in essence, I still think you're kind of a one of a kind in this experience you've gone through. Like how many people would actually even do what you did, but it's so now kind of different, and maybe we do it even less because it's become so easy than what we would did. So now I'm intrigued. You're in Israel. You've just seen these two women that you haven't seen in Arabia in a month. What goes next? Like, because you're dealing with, well, people would probably call it today PTSD, right? Like in the sense of culture shock and like all the things that you're going through. How long has it been since you've been in touch with home?
Oh, a long time. 'Cause I've got no address. I can't afford to phone. Um, yeah, nobody knew where I was really. So I hitchhiked around kind of Israel in those days, and it was really really exciting. You feel like you're at ground zero, and with the
Really,
war
eh?
going on and stuff. I mean, it was like everything's happening right here. You're living right in the middle of everything. And I mean, you couldn't set your backpack down. Like I would get on a bus, let's say, or I was going to buy a donut. I went in the shop, and I'm doing all of this, not with a backpack, with a day bag, a day pack, a
Yep.
little one. So
Yep.
it's hot. I only need a t-shirt and a pair of shorts and one change maybe. And I just made two steps to the left, looking at the donuts over there, and immediately somebody's on. Oh, excuse me, is this your pack? Oh, could you pick it up, take it with you, because it could be a bomb, And it was very, 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 very tense in those days because of what was going
Wow.
on. But anyways, I got back to Europe. I bought a ticket from Tel Aviv to I think Amsterdam, and then I was ready to go home. I thought I need to go home. Nobody knows if I'm still alive. And
Right.
I got a cheap ticket, Amsterdam to New York. So
Okay.
I land in New York, and a ticket to Vancouver is still a bit expensive. And before this, in my early 20s, I was a truck driver for some time, long haul. Like after my bike in there, I just I because I like to travel and want to get paid
Yeah.
for it. So
Yes. Yes.
there was about a year or two I was long haul truck driving across USA and Canada and that kind of thing. So I thought, okay. So I'm at the airport in New York, and I asked the bus driver. They have these shuttle buses and stuff going into the city, and I said, "Do you go by? Would you stop at a truck stop anywhere?" He said, "Oh yeah, we're on the interstate. I can let you off at a truck stop. I'll take the exit there, and it's right there." I said, "Good, thanks." So he dropped me off at a truck stop. So I go to the control center where the guys pay for their fuel and stuff, and I asked the cashier there, "Do you mind if I leave a little note here?" And she says, "Yeah, yeah, sure." And so I wrote a note: truck driver going to West Coast of Canada, or Vancouver or something, West Coast, looking for a ride and will help with the driving. So I gave her that note. She posted it by the tail. And I said, "I'll be sitting right over there having a coffee. I'm going to be sitting right over there." So, so the first guy, so one guy came over a few minutes later, but he had just got there. He had to unload and stuff, and it was going to be some hours. And I said, "Okay, well, if you're back here on your way out, depending where your load is, maybe I'll come with you, but I think I'll wait this one out." And then, so he left. And another guy says, "Yeah, I'm going to one place, not all the way to the West Coast, but it was like to Colorado or something." So he says, "Okay, sure." So we drove double, team driving. And in those days, it wasn't as strict, with logbooks.
Yes.
And so he gets paid for all the miles. In those days, the more you drove, the more you get paid. And I was doing probably more than half the driving while he was sleeping. He bought my meals, and I'm driving my way across. And and then when he would drive, I'm sleeping in the bunk in the sleeper. And so amazing. So we got unloaded there. Then we went up to, I think, Boise, Idaho. He had a load of dog food going to Boise or something. And then from there, he was going south. So as I get out of the truck, he let me off right by the truck stop there, the closest one. There's a truck pulling in from a company I used to work for. And so he's right there and going right to Langley.
Oh my goodness.
He said, "What are you doing here?" "Oh," I said, "Oh, I'm just on my way back from a trip from through Europe and the Middle East." "Oh, okay." Jump in. And so I get a ride right back to his company, and he's fueling up his truck, and another guy's fueling up the truck, and he's a personal friend of mine from Abbotsford that drives for the same company.
No way.
I get in with him, and he just came off the road, fueled up, dropped me off at my parents' yard on the road, stopped on the road. I said, "Hey, Mom and Dad, I'm home." "Where'd you come from?" "Oh, man, all kinds of places." It was just kind of one of those things you couldn't plan it, but it was out 3 trucks from New York to my doorstep, 3 trucks across the USA. Yeah, free meals. You couldn't plan that, right?
Well, not everyone would even know to do what you did. Like just the fact that you had that in your background. I'm actually thinking of this movie, Slumdog Millionaire.
Oh yeah,
you may have heard it,
right?
And it's like
great film.
Much of what you've described is almost like how that movie worked, in the sense that he had this experience to know the answer to that crazy question that he was being asked, and it's like, who would know when you flew into New York from Amsterdam that, well, rather than taking a flight, I could just hop on a truck and get back and have my meals paid for and help the guy out driving. Like,
yeah,
I think that's an amazing
of things. It was a combination of I like to drive, and I like to drive trucks, and I mean, I'm still a Mennonite at heart. It was the cheapest way to get home. So a combination of all of that, it worked for me. Yeah.
And way more interesting than jumping on a plane and having to sit in a plane for 4 hours. So
way more.
Dan, I know this is, for me, sometimes it's hard to believe. We've been going like an hour and 20 minutes here. Your story's been like, amazing.
Okay.
And I'm trying to be wary of your time too, because I know there's other things, but I'm actually thinking we haven't even got to some of the things that you've done since that point in time in carrying your, shall we say, um, sense of the gospel and your calling. And I think that would be I would really like to think it would be very interesting to talk about that. But your story, I hope you're getting ready to put some of this into a book, because it's a time where you have a description of boots on the ground to me, as I said before, that you actually lived it, and what was going on that we heard in the Western world in the Middle East. It's hard. It's almost hard to believe that your experience, like, it's just crazy to me. It's just a wonderful thing to hear. So,
It's from a
but
different era. It's hard to imagine now because life is, even for me too, life is so different. How we live now is so
oh
different. That was an era that's kind of bygone in a sense. Yeah.
yes,
Hmm.
well, just I mean, I think 9/11 changed a lot
It changed
as far
everything.
as
Yeah.
how,
Yeah.
yeah, how security was seen in
Yeah.
the world. And like, at one point in time, even crossing the border, like, wasn't an issue, whether you're driving or even going through the airports. And today it's just like, I mean, I love being able to just fly across Canada, because outside of having your luggage scrutinized, it's like there's no customs to go through or anything.
Right.
And now, like, there's always another thing to have to kind of
Take
be
your belt
following
off,
up.
right? Take your watch off. Yeah.
And so you
Yeah.
travel at a time where a lot of that wasn't really, well, at that point in time, it wasn't even thought of, right? Like, it wasn't even
Hmm.
thought, like, why would we have to scrutinize such a thing? So it's kind
Hmm.
of neat. But Dan,
Yeah.
I was going to say, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I'd love to have you back again.
Yeah. Maybe another
And
time. Let's see. Yeah,
I
I'd
was
love to,
going to
Deb.
say, because I'd love to continue your story as far as where that goes. Like, now you're back home again. Your family, your parents must have been overjoyed to see you after
Yeah.
such a long time and probably not knowing what's going on. But to your point, that was a very different time as far as that goes as well, right? Because you didn't have email, you didn't have like
Right.
Facebook that you could just pop on, right?
Yeah, and
And a lot of it was
I didn't have an address where they could send mail to. I was moving
right.
places. So yeah, yeah.
And and
I think
and
it
and
really
and
built
that
the
was
faith.
like,
It built the faith of my parents too. They just resigned me to God. Like, we can't worry. My mom just quit worrying. She's, I can't do it.
that's
And
cool.
yeah, she was quite a woman. Yeah.
There's there's something to be said about that, Dan. I think that we're, in many ways, it would be great to, in some ways, and maybe AI will bring that to us, is to rebuild that kind of, if you call it, faith. That
Mhm.
we've gotten so caught up in our systems today that we can't even, we can't, our kids don't even walk to school, like we have
Mm.
to drive them basically from door to door.
Yeah.
And because I was commenting to somebody the other day, was like, I said, I learned a lot walking to school, like
Yeah.
the
Right.
things that you did and that you didn't do, and who you saw and who you didn't. Now it's like I get in the car at home, and then I get out at school, and mom comes and or dad comes and picks me up at when school's over. It's
Yeah.
just a very
Yeah.
different world, as you said. But again, I can't thank you enough. Like I said, it was kind of an accidental. I mean, how we met was kind of how you
Yeah.
described you learning on the motorcycle. You sat down. You said, "You mind if I sit down at the table?"
Yeah.
And I am so glad you did.
I thought, wow, these are some cool looking dudes. I can learn something from them. Yeah, that
Well,
was
I
cool.
was going to say, I would say the feeling was mutual, but I think it was quite unbalanced, because I learned an awful lot, even in the short time that we talked about your world and what you're up to. So I was going to say, I'll kind of go on this. I think you kind of said something to the fact that you're looking at retiring, and I was trying to figure out, like, how does someone that's had the world experience you have retire?
Mm. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So, So I think with that, I was going to say it'll be. I'm looking forward. Maybe early in the new year, if you're around, we can continue this story and kind of move on because it's a very no doubt very intriguing. I think the motorcycle is like the old time horse and allows you to go to places you just don't go to in a car.
Yeah, that's right.
And it gives you freedom.
Yeah. And you can even stop beside
Do
the
you
road and
still?
talk to somebody, face to face. There's not even a window there.
Yes.
So you're more likely to just lean over and like that. It's more raw kind of thing.
And you still ride, right?
I still do. Yeah. I still enjoy it. My bike's out of insurance in a few days because it's getting cold. But I was going to say, there's really no retirement in the kingdom. You can retire from your job, but
Yes.
there's so
Yes.
many exciting experiences and adventures with God and opportunities for ministry and stuff. So in that sense, I'll never retire, and I haven't. My wife and I are still
Right on.
involved, and so that goes on, that carries on. It morphs into something a little different. Yeah.
No, that is very cool. I'm not really a big fan of the word retirement because I think you learn new things like and what you can do and that's
Sure.
And in meeting you, like I was going to say, that wasn't an accident, it wasn't a coincidence, it was
For
meant to
sure.
happen,
For sure.
and
Yeah.
I'm so pleased that we've been able to kind of get connected again. So Dan, is there anything closing you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
Can't think of anything. I've really enjoyed this. I don't know when I've sat and talked at this length about those days. It's been good for me to reflect back, because life is busy and you don't often do this. So
Yeah.
it's been
No.
really fun for me to reflect back and see again, hey, God has been in this and God has been so good to me and to my family, So
Yep.
yeah, glory to God. That's all I can say. And bless you.
Right
Have a
on.
good day.
That's a great way of saying it. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thanks for listening to Better Than Not, another interesting episode with Dan Martins, and hopefully we'll have him again in the series in another episode, maybe in 2025. So with that, so long, Dan. Hold on for a minute if you can, and bye for
Will
now.
do. Bye.
Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not.